Hi everyone. Did you enjoy your lunch? Hope so. I'll try to keep my voice down in case you want to take a nap. Okay. Before we start, I want to start a bit differently. There's this huge issue with food pretty recently in new areas in the world. People tend to are very bad crops, and people migrate to because of the very, very poor economy locally, and yet lots of food travel across the whole world somehow from one place to richest countries, so we could always get a fresh banana for us. So I kind of like this startup. They call themselves nanofarms. This is something that you can place in your home, I guess that, and start growing your own plants and eat them. It's like a micro farm inside of your apartment. This is how nicely you can stack them together, grow something locally, whatever you want. There's a LED light for these crops as well. And I am just amazed how new startups change the world, innovate to save our planet and help us out. I don't know how about you, but I always like to energize while watching startups like that before I go back to my code and try to move this goddamn button 3 pixels left. This is amazing. But I'm here to talk about productivity. And productivity isn't something that we always can just measure. Pretty recently, I got this idea of how often we relate to idea of time in our projects, especially if someone asks us from outside of the project, do you do automated tests? No, we have no time. Right? That's a number one reason we never had time to write automated tests. Stuff like that. But then again, you probably can recall, perhaps even yourselves, working on a side project, and then it didn't take much time to create something that your team in your company would take months to develop. Pretty similar thing. Sometimes, let's say you have a talk and you need to have your presentation done, and you never had time before to prepare properly, so then you just have like last night or 2 days before you create the whole presentation and practice for that. Like, you had this time for a longer period before the event itself, right? But whenever you thought that something is very important, you just go ahead and find time. Well, I can remember projects that had these really cool solutions or languages introduced, not because there was a lot of time, but because someone had a passion for that single solution. Like, for example, I once, a long time ago, just introduced Groovy for automated tests and just rewritten tests just in my Slack time, between one chore and another user story, just like that, because I wanted to do that. So I used every 3, 4, 5 minutes to do that. And I completed a task that usually the whole team would say, like, OK, now we need several weeks to migrate the whole thing, right? So the way we were thinking about time, how much something costs, is heavily corrupted this way. The very important part is our passion. So I want to share a story with you. This is my story, and I want to share it for 2 reasons. First of them is that stories are a sticky way to keep ideas in our heads. It's easier to attach an idea when you hear it in a story. The other reason is that I have two small kids, and I guess I just have become a storyteller recently. This is just now the regular way I present information. So a long, long time ago, when I had my first interview, and I was interviewed to a company that wanted to hire a junior developer, and well, you could hardly call me a developer. I could probably code several things, but that way wasn't enough. So my interview looked pretty much like, okay, so do you know anything about Hibernate? No, not really. Okay, so do you know what's Spring about? Nope, never heard of it. Okay, so I kind of see the pattern, so they didn't want to follow too long because they needed me anyway. They even asked me if I used Eclipse just to throw me an easy question to say yes, but no, I didn't even do that. So what do you use as an IDE? I guess I've used it like 2 times. If I have to say that I use an IDE, it's going to be NetBeans. That wasn't a good answer, right? If you used NetBeans back then, you were either just a student who wanted to try out Java, or a hipster that basically could do the same thing in Vim or anything else. And I wasn't a hipster. I'm still not. So I was very lucky. I got into a team, and I've learned pretty much everything about doing web applications, and I had a really good mentor right there. And the whole team, well, not everything was so useful to learn then, because whenever I wanted to code this part, I still have nightmares for that, but we were using JSF. So in order to break a line in HTML, you actually, who here ever used JSF? Okay, so the old way of doing that, using like typefaces or pretty faces, was like this. You actually had this nice tag to specify that you want to use an HTML tag with this value. So not everything was cool about the project, but I really admired the whole passion for coding. This is why I got infected with software development. I could see people constantly talking about how to do things better, how to fix something in the project. Well, there wasn't much passion for the thing that we were actually creating, but we had lots of discussions about the whole architecture, the way we deploy the application, and everything like that. Now, after a while, we decided to change the team. And sometime after that, I joined my first corporation, and the only one, fortunately. But then I learned totally new things. And from just moving from a small company to a corporation, I saw something I didn't know existed. I worked on a project that just ended up 10 years. It was 10 years old. That's a long, long time for a project, especially if you just keep on adding things without moving that around. Just like to have an idea, 10 years ago, you wouldn't even have an iPhone. Like, for another week from now, exactly. 10 years ago, first iPhone was released. And this means that you actually used your phone to use physical keyboard to enter a phone number to call someone. What a weird way to use a phone, right? So it definitely taught me a lot why refactoring is important, how to introduce new things to a legacy code in this difficult environment. Also, how to look busy so managers don't think that you have too much time and they put you more work then. But then I saw actually people were never talking about project itself, the programming or languages or solutions. during lunch or coffee breaks. Like, they always discuss different topics, super important, like their family or kids or mortgage or anything else than work, right? And, well, I was very sad about that, but it was a really good thing to see such an environment. So I went looking for something else, something like, well, I was totally passionate about the technology, right? So a friend of mine called me, and it was 2011, and he told me, we're going to start a project in Scala. No one uses Scala. It's 2011. It's insane to use Scala for production back then, right? So my interview was mostly like, OK, so do you want to do that? Yeah, like, you're really going to do Scala? OK, great, I'm in. All right, so how much do you want to earn? OK, so like, this is my last salary. We cannot give you like, we can give you like half of that. But I'm going to do Scala, right? OK, so I'm in. Like, this was pretty much it. This is exactly something that was the single most important thing for me back then. Then I actually got involved in community as well. And I started organizing meetups, conferences, hackathons, different kinds of events. At some point of time, I even organized meta meetup. Does anyone know what is a meta meetup? Any ideas? Yeah, it's a meetup about meetups. So meetups organizers met together to share ideas on how to do things better. So as you can see, I got pretty addicted. But then my role in the company shifted as well. So now I was kind of responsible for how different projects were doing, and are our customers happy with the way that we develop software? Yes, by that time I already read Management 3.0, which is also called Agile Management or Managing for Happiness, pretty recently by Jürgen Appel. Probably most of you read, at least heard this guy presenting. But then I saw like, OK, so how fast can we develop things or do something was totally dependent of how the team felt about the project itself, whether they wanted the project to happen, did they feel the need that they were actually developing for. But for most teams, there was no such feeling. Like, they were super happy to work on side projects, learning new things. They were very passionate about, but many people just simply didn't care too much about the product itself they were developing, right? So we tried different things, and I like how people go to conferences and share what worked for them and how great it is. But the more important part is when people share what didn't work, so we won't repeat their mistakes. And one such thing for us was, I could see that already in the huge company, that it never works to tell people what to do. And the worst part actually is not about demotivating people or anything like that. It's really bad even if people do exactly what you tell them, because they don't know what do you want to achieve. They will just make exactly what you told them to do. Let's hope it works. This part? Some of you probably saw that.
Out of the bag. Take the lid off the jar of peanut butter. Get a butter knife and stick it inside of the peanut butter jar. With the knife, scoop some of the peanut butter out of the inside of the jar. Spread your scoop of peanut butter onto one of your pieces of bread with a knife.
No!
Squeeze some jelly onto the other piece of bread. Spread the jelly on the bread with the butter knife. Put your 2 pieces of bread, peanut butter and jelly sides together. Done.
Well, you probably get the idea. The guy was trying to teach his children how difficult it is. It goes for like 10 minutes. The guy doesn't have a heart. But they try different solutions for better things. This is actually almost impossible to explain someone what he needs to do. And this is actually very easy to tell someone what do you need to happen or what do you need to achieve, right? Something else, just often companies praise someone else, like, hey, there's an example of this great person who is so passionate about the project, and, well, you cannot actually just copy someone's work and do it yourself. Actually, it's pretty bad that you cannot be praised or just someone else gets. But some things actually worked. Having one-on-ones. One thing I've missed with Management 3.0, the main idea, as I get it, is that the passion is not something that you have to teach people to have. Like, they really want to develop the product. They really want to help you out. It's just there are so many roadblocks for them that at some point of time, they are more interested in cool libraries, in continuous delivery, or other things that not always are important for your project, or totally something unrelated to work. So one-on-ones is just this great mechanism, and be careful, because lots of companies do that for like discussing goals or things like that. But one-on-ones can be very useful to understand what the roadblocks are, how someone got plenty of ideas and none of them got realized, so now they just simply don't care about the project anymore. The other idea is actually praising the right behavior. When you can see someone was contributing or trying to contribute outside of his field to the project, like saying, okay, so perhaps we don't have to do this whole bunch of functionality right here. Maybe something else would be as good for users, and that would be very easy to implement, right? And even if you don't agree with that, it's really good to have that, to say that. And the other part is actually passing the autonomy. And usually, in companies, it looks like you have to pass the information from the person that is the closest to the problem to a person that is the decision maker, like to a manager or someone else, the product owner. And the other way to do that, and I just lost my slides. Too bad. Okay. Another way to have that done, yeah? Anything else? Can restart. Okay. All right. Here. Another way to do that is actually to transport the decision-making part to the person that knows problems the best. I'm going to be back on this one later on. So these were cool ideas to try with team. And then after a longer while, I decided to actually move from a software house to a product startup. So I didn't want to be a consultant anymore. I wanted to have my skin in the game. I wanted to be the person that actually cares for the company's result, not only for how well the project is developed. And then I got some really cool observations right there. I saw a team, a hard-working team, maybe even too hard, like doing overtime and in evenings and weekends. They were trying to have the MVP version to happen for the company. And they weren't lacking any engagement into the work they were having. But still, the results were pretty terrible. Like, they had lots of work started, but it was really hard to figure out even what work was being currently developed because of the whole chaos in the team and lack of idea, a single idea for everyone, which way to develop the product. And shortly after joining the company, I was to become a CTO, which was super scary for me, because now I was the one responsible to have that fixed. So, well, I mean, it was my dream. I wanted that to happen, but not like really happen. I have several dreams I like to think that could happen at some point of time, but like, I would love to have a house in the woods somewhere and be super quiet, but if someone just offered that to me now, I mean, what the hell would I do in the woods all day, right? But it happened anyway. So what I realized is you can go fast, and the company was very, very modern. Like, it was a startup, just 1 year old, and having microservices, really cool deployment, the whole infrastructure in the cloud, automated tests, and that was right. They could go pretty fast. The problem was actually lack of the direction. And if everyone pulls in a different direction, then the whole application pretty much stays in the same place, right? So I don't know whether you've ever heard of something called V2MOMs, but this goes for vision, values, methods, obstacles, and measures. And it's like a framework to actually expose the idea you want to realize as a company, to have your ultimate goal. So you go ahead and start with vision. You talk to people, you have people contributing there. What is like the single responsibility for the company? If we failed for in any other field, what is one most important thing that we still want to have happen, right? Values are just constraints that we want to move in. We don't want to cross these barriers. But then, at this point, when you already know the goal, you can go into methods and plan for what do you actually want to do to achieve or be closer to your ultimate goal. The other thing was, so after actually having this goal, you can go and methods. You really need like a way to be able to measure whether you're moving in the right direction or not. But then if you have all of that, you still have plenty of work going on. So if you want to increase your speed, you probably need to measure that for once, but then be able to see what are you currently working on and how is it going. And this is actually called the feedback. And the whole feedback loop is for you to be able to react somehow. And if you have plenty of things started and they take a long time to be finished, this whole feedback loop is very long. It's hard for you to take different actions right now because it's going to take a long time before you find out whether it worked or not. So I've introduced KANBAN there. And well, for once, it helped us to organize things and to visualize. But then again, it didn't help us with still having lots of different things to do and this really long feedback loop. So after several weeks, we got to a point where we had about 40 to 45 single cards in average going through the whole board weekly. And then I wanted to have an experiment, to have the shortest feedback loop possible. And just for 2 weeks, as an experiment, the whole team had this huge limitation. Every card gets 2 people working on that single card. That was one of them. So always 2 people driving the whole story. Those 2 people drive the story from next column through the development, code review, QA, deployment, all the way to done. And then they could actually get another card. So it means that they have only one story for the whole time. So if they get blocked by anything, like just, OK, so we're waiting for code review, what do we do? Nothing. You can go to YouTube, you can go do whatever you want. Or you can just push the person that is supposed to make the code review if you don't want to wait. So it was the velocity was supposed to go down because of the really hard limitations, but I wanted to people feel this nice thing about having only one item in your head. No context switches, no anything. For the first week of doing that, we went from between 40 and 45 in average to 75 things for the first week of this experiment. So we almost doubled our efficiency as a team just by having all of these things done immediately. It was extremely surprising for me. I mean, I wasn't expecting things to go faster. But then I started observing different things. Like, if you have a code review, like 10 or 20 minutes after you're done with your piece of code, then you know all of it. You have it cached in your head. If you get some comments right there, you just go ahead and fix them. If you have a bug after that, you already know what happened. And then you have to do the deployment, and you don't want to wait for that. So you actually go ahead and make the deployment yourself, not wait for most of things to happen. But the deployment is not so, was not so friendly to be done. So what do you do if you have to make it for the second or third time in a row because you cannot start working on something else? You actually redo the whole script to solve issues that you had for a long time, because it got too painful in this way. OK. Back to metrics. You have to be really, really careful when you're doing metrics, because metrics are super popular in huge companies to give this feeling of controlling things, right? You have KPIs, and thanks to them, managers feel like something is going in a good or bad direction, and developers, instead of trying to achieve a company goal, try to make KPIs look good. But metrics can be very, very useful if the team or a person that uses the metric is responsible for the thing that is being measured, is the owner of the metric. As a team, we can have our velocity, but I don't want anyone else to see that, because then we'll try to make it look good. But if we only have it for ourselves, it is super helpful to notice how things are going and whether we should do something or not. So metrics are can be very, very powerful. OK, yeah, like some time passed. I decided for a new adventure as well. So I pretty recently joined Codility, the developers testing tool. Probably some of you know it. And what happens? Well, I can see already just from the first week several meetings happening. So there is just like a product-oriented meeting, like a refinement or planning meeting. And developers are like, yeah, OK, I'm like good with that. So anything to add here? Nope. Let's have that done, right? And then another meeting was dev meeting for developers from different teams working on talking about technical things, what they want to change in the whole environment. And all of the developers like, let's do this, or no, it's going to break something else. Let's have it differently. OK, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to join you. Lots of great energy, right? So I kind of already see the pattern of what's going on. And this is easier and easier to spot in teams. So you already know how to act on that, or at least start trying. So several more observations I had during several of those really fun years. One of them, this is actually a really good story. If you've been ever wondering what is the most upvoted answer on Stack Overflow ever, here it is. And the question was about CPU optimization. Something was very, very surprising. And the answer starts actually with a story about trains and railways back in the 19th century. So imagine this situation, like you already have these long distance trains and connections, but totally no way, no radio communication, no long distance communication. So if you wanted to, and you had several switches and branches on the way, so whenever you wanted to actually, you needed to choose your way on a branch, you had to start a train. And this isn't like, OK, stop, let's switch it, and then we can go further, right? It takes a long way to stop it. And then you can switch or tell the switchman to wherever you want to go, have that switched, and then you can go. But what they observed after a while, like this was so ineffective, so expensive, but the switchman usually knew where the train is already coming. Just by observing the part of the day or the day of the week or month, they already knew, like, oh, all right, so this is probably going there. So they started doing something different. Whenever a train was coming, the switchman was guessing which way the train should go. The train didn't stop, and if the switchman guessed correctly, the train just went there. But if he missed, then the train had to stop, like still going away until it was totally stopped. Then it had to go all the way back to the switch, turn, and go in the right direction. That sounds super ineffective, right? And yet, just because switchman usually knew where the train is going to, everyone started using that because the overall efficiency was much, much better. So if you're trying to do processes and optimizations in your company, I started thinking of it this way. Whether I want to optimize for people not caring for the company or even having malicious behavior, or do I want to optimize for people that are passionate and hardworking and want to achieve something? Right? And I started telling you about how the information needs to travel to the decision maker. But why do we lay out the company in such a way that we get managers or important directors to make decisions there? Well, mostly because we trust them more than people we've never met. Or we feel like, OK, someone could just take bad decisions or just malicious decisions for the company. So this is exactly what happens. We optimize for the negative behavior. But actually, if you think about it, this is a very rare case that happens. And we optimize for that as a regular case. So I see as passing information if you just poured some water and you want to transport that via a manager to someone else, and everyone just uses hands to transport the water. And in the end, you just have this tiny amount of water that finally got to the end. And then a person that you even trust, and is very, very smart, knows pretty much nothing about the issue they have to decide on. They don't know the whole context, all of the dependency, the technical knowledge for the whole issue to be able to decide whether to change the database or to move to another platform. Even the most significant and important decisions are taken by those people only by this little amount of information. And this communication is so ineffective because simply we are not computers, we are humans. Like, if you think about computers, they, how many of us are here in the conference? 2.5K, that's a huge conference. And 2.5K machines could have this conference, the whole knowledge sharing, in just under 1 second. Done. They don't have to do storytelling, right? They can just pass information. But people are not like that. We have to even tell stories to present the information better. So what you could do instead, you can pass the decision-making to the person that has the biggest knowledge about the problem, right? If you ever find time, that's a really good book about decision-making, and it shows a story of a company that actually changes, alters to a way of making decisions in exactly this way. Even the most critical and important information decisions. Right. Okay. So if you want to do that, and actually I just read recently 2 books by former Army officers, US Army officers, and they actually started during last decade, they started using this pattern as well. They are stopping in giving orders to their subordinates. They are passing the intent, the thing that they need to have achieved. Because this is easier to pass someone the high-level idea, strategy, so someone could actually figure out the details, how to implement it, how to make it happen, if they know what they are aiming for. And again, if someone tries to understand the huge complexity of another team's work or mission and try to make them orders, this was super inefficient. So in companies, usually not the CTO tells developers what to do, but anyway, you try to do, okay, so I want you to do this thing. And you could do that in another way, like you can start with what are you trying to achieve. The really nice to have thing there would be even to tell why do you want that to happen. That helps someone makes decisions, in making decisions down the line. And it doesn't even have to be direct because it can go through several layers of organizations. And this is how V2MOMs usually work in the company. So you can try creating a single document for the whole company, and then department after department can create their own V2MOMs. Like, okay, so we know the general vision of the company, but we are not going to do all of that ourselves. We're going to help in achieving that goal by something else, by doing something smaller that we can do. And then in this department, you have single teams there, and they can actually see the main point, the main goal, the smaller department V2MOM, and then something they can create for themselves. But they know why exactly, so they can pick something and choose. Right. So if you already know what to do, then you want to do it fast. And usually we talk about different things for being able to develop things faster in such a manner or not. And I can see this pattern for things that actually help us go faster. And these are the tools that give us the fastest possible feedback. Automated tests are for checking whether the code works or not, but TDD is for something different. TDD is for like shortening the feedback loops from hours or maybe even days before we see whether the code we have written works, down to seconds. Whenever I have a failing test, during the TDD session, I already know what to fix, because last time the test was passing was just 3 lines of code ago. I already know exactly where did I break something, and it takes me just seconds to fix that. Instead of going back to something I have written days ago, try to figure out again what to do there, and then fix it. Another one is code reviews, but then most of us still only do code reviews to check whether the thing is working, or whether there are some bugs in that, or just to tell someone that the code is not very readable. And we are losing like this huge important part of doing code reviews, the positive feedback. If you write something, you're never sure how does it look, or you're wondering, or you're trying out new things, and if someone likes that, you will never know, because people are not praising right things often in teams. And the positive feedback actually makes you do more of good things. So you're trying a new solution, the new way to write something down to create a new model in such a manner. And then if you get praised for that by other people, like, hey, I really just taken a really quick look at the code, and I already knew what it does. This was very, very readable for me. This teaches us how to do that. Right? When you have kids, and they're like just 1-year-old, and they start to learn walking, you never go to them and say like, oh, okay, now this foot. Oh, no, don't do 2 steps with the same foot. Go with another foot right now. Or the stop was too short, you have to go farther. You want to help them out, but what you actually do is just whenever they take the first step, even no matter how bad it was, or they just fell right after that, you go like, great, that's it, right? You can do it. That's a really good first step. Because you want to encourage them, like say them, okay, that wasn't perfect, but the direction is good. So keep on improving. If we use the first version if we use the version that we use for code reviews, the child would be like, even if they don't speak yet, they will be like, the hell with it. I guess just walking isn't for me. Like, I'll try something else. Once I've already been there, but retrospectives give us this nice feedback as well. Whenever you want to bring and discuss something, you can always see whether this topic is important for other team members too, or maybe just you, right? So you can always use that to have this shorter feedback loop than just trying everything out. And this is all very, very important, because I can just see this pattern that the software is just the most expensive thing out there in the world right now. Like, a small company just wants to develop a small applications for them. They cannot afford it because of how expensive developers are. Like, the market is very, very good for us, but it's very bad for people that need this application to happen. And we are the bottleneck for most businesses that need software, actually. Most of companies actually get stuck on the speed of development itself. And pretty recently, I like that. That's a really cool guy working on AI. But even the OpenAI CTO recently just admitted, like, okay, so we're taking that's like an open organization for solving difficult AI problems and open sourcing that for the whole world. And right after some work, they were already like, okay, so I guess that AI isn't that difficult after all. Whenever we were trying to take this huge, important problem and implement it, the whole AI part is pretty simple. We get stuck on engineering anyway, right? Okay, so what do you have to what I try to remember and focus on that is that first I need to know exactly what and why am I implementing and trying to create or achieve. And then I'm using short feedback loops to be able to go fast. Yeah, that's it. So now everyone can go and save the world. I hope you liked it, so thank you very much.